why the F should anybody care about getting real world assets on chain?
You shouldn't. It only becomes something that people care about when there's value in it.
Maybe I could say like making RWA sexy again.
A lot of people ask me, like, what's the real world assets going to work? It's the wrong question because it's not about when it's going to come. It's already here.
I actually never thought of it like that.
I want to make it easy for anyone to interact with the entire world on chain. If you don't know anything about crypto, but you want to tokenize anything, right, you can easily click a few buttons to get on chain.
Yeah, that's actually the Web3 way.
In crypto, I think everybody has just incredibly short memories. And so right now, all we know is this insane market cycle where everything is going up. BTC is going to 1 million, right? Everything's going nuclear and we'll never go down again.
You sold one company, you took one to public, and one you drove to zero. So
The greatest companies out there, you look at Facebook, you look at Google, right? Almost all their founders are trash.
what's the top thing that matters to you when you are looking at investing?
You can change markets, you can change products, you can change customers. You cannot change the founder.
In this episode, Chris Yin, the founder of Plume Network, shares insights into the potential of tokenizing real-world assets. As a founder turned investor, Chris reflects on lessons learned on market timing and building impactful projects. We also explore Plume's recent funding success, the role of stablecoins as foundational RWAs, and the importance of adaptability in Web3. I am Diksha, and you are listening to Web3 Quest. Enjoy the conversation. Before I start, I want to ask you, why the F should anybody care about getting real world assets on chain?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, and thanks for having me. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes and it's been great. So excited to talk about it today. But I mean, look, I think the story is very simple. You shouldn't, right? In so many words, nobody should care and nobody should have to care, right? It only becomes something that people care about when there's value in it, right? And today, a lot of the stuff that's happening in RWAs has been forced, right? People are trying to put something on chain for a philosophical reason or from some academic reason, right? This ledger is better for X, Y, Z reasons. Let's do it. But that doesn't matter. Nobody should care, right? Now, why will it matter? And why will it become a thing today, right? Ultimately, it's a confluence of a few trends, right? Number one, right, if you look at the market today, it's very clear there's a few things happening. The world is accepting crypto, right, at an institutional level, right, or at least accepting the blockchain, right, with the ETF, with things like changing from a regulatory landscape in the U.S., adoption in Asia and Latin America and the Middle East. It's happening, right, and for us in crypto, right, the number one thing that we talk about a lot is inflows, right? And onboarding, right? We want more people, more usage, more capital, more use cases, all these things on chain, and a very good bridge to bring more people in, right? And we need more of those today is real world assets, is being able to interact with things you're already familiar with and know, but in a different environment and begin to explore how this world works, right? You want to sort of reduce the number of new things and variables at a time because that's all barriers to adoption. And so the more we can provide a nice gateway and a nice bridge to things, then the more people ostensibly will be coming in, right? And that involves both retail, but also the institutional side of things where a lot of real capitals and real demand, real volume is. So that's really why. Like, ultimately for us, it's going to be, why should anyone care, right? It's because if you're in crypto, this is one of the major unlocks and growth paths for crypto, right? Crypto today is a $3.5 trillion industry, right? The real world, each subsector of the real world is many orders of magnitude larger, right? Derivatives 1,000 trillion, real estate's 300 trillion, equities is 100 trillion. All these things are much, much, much larger. So if we can take these things and put them on chain, you can only imagine what's going to happen, right? Once we can get this thing. So it's better for all of us here. It's better for those assets. It's better for the users. It's better for everything. So that's really why. But a lot of it today is forced and contrived and not what we need to be doing. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Let's go back to 2020 because I'm picking that year because that's when I got into crypto. And I was thinking of, how should I title this podcast episode? And I was like, maybe I could say like making RWA sexy again. So my question is like, why do you think till now we have failed? I would say we have failed, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong or you disagree, in bringing real world assets on chain. And what is your mission to make it sexy again, to make it usable again, to make it right again?
Totally. I mean, I think, look, What are we doing? Maybe I'll start there, right?
Mhm.
What are we doing? What do we want to do? We want to make it easy. I think that the kernel of what we're doing here is we believe that life on chain is better. That's the ultimate point, which I think the way things are done on chain is superior to how things are done in many ways in the real world. Right? Things are connected, things are liquid, it's global, it's 24/7, it's not owned by anybody, right? And you have a lot of permissionless innovation. People can build and do whatever they want, and it's created a lot of amazing things, right? So by having this single unified layer for things, we've been able to create a bunch of new things, explore new use cases, and just make things better for a lot of people who live on chain. Now, the problem is that the real world doesn't work like that, right? The real world is gated up. It's barriered. There are a bunch of siloed systems, a lot of middlemen, a lot of rules, and all these things prevent these assets from getting what they want, prevent users from getting what they want. And that's ultimately what we want. We want to be able to connect users and people to what they want, right? And have that come anyway. And today it's impossible to do in the traditional world, right? And so our view has been very simple. How do we actually do this? What we should do, most people, what they want to do, especially in RWAs, you have a lot of TradFi people coming in to say, oh, here's a problem we have in TradFi as an example. Let's take the blockchain or take some technology and try to apply it to solve these problems, right?
Mhm.
Which I think makes sense. I get it. And it sort of maps to how technology historically has been done, right? You went from, on-prem to the cloud, right? And so you say, hey, look, I have a problem. It's expensive to rack servers. I'll put it into the cloud. That saves me money, right? And that's one way to do things. I think it's a mistake, though. And ultimately, whether or not it wins or the way we do it is going to win is we'll see, right? But our view is instead of taking the blockchain and applying it to the real world, we want to bring the real world to the blockchain, right? Which means, it's allowing us on chain today to express our ideas and to interact with the real world, how we interact with the on-chain world today, which is it's done in an open and permissionless way. Right. There are, it's global by default. It's on 24/7. Right. It's composable. Right. And you have permissionless innovation and you really begin to build and turn everything into software and tokens. And when you do that, things become very, very powerful and exciting because you can really change things at a level you could not before. So that's ultimately what I think we're trying to do, right? And our vision here and our mission, right? Which is, how do we make the world as easy to interact with as it is on chain, using things on chain, despite what people say about UX, which is true, right? Once you understand how to interact with the on chain world, it's very easy, right? Because I can do anything I want anytime. No one can tell me not to, right? Now we have to iron out the beginning piece to get there, but once you're there, if I want some asset,
Mhm.
I just go swap for it, right? If I want to take out a loan against it, I just do it. If some builder wants to come and do something, they just grab tokens and do it, right? We're allowed to create and do new things without any questions being asked, right? And that leads to a bunch of creativity and new projects and new things that we had never been seen. And so that to us is like what we want to do with the real world. Bring that on chain in this format, in this user experience, in this direction. And to me, that's the distinction between us and everyone else again, because everyone else, I think, is largely thinking about how do we take the blockchain to the real world and think about it and use it as a piece of technology. Right? How do we use this to save money? Right? Instead of like buying X, Y, instead of buying
Mhm.
servers or spending money in the cloud, we can do it on chain. Right? Instead of having to spend money, it's all auditable. They're thinking about it from a technological and a utility standpoint. Whereas us in crypto, I think we see crypto as a network. Right? It's a way to communicate, it's a way to interact with everybody. And that distinction to me is why it unlocks power, right? Because instead of using this as a one-dimensional thing, saving money on admin costs, right? We're actually creating new value, right? You're finding new paths of new customers, new products, new use cases that couldn't be done before. That drives new revenue, and ultimately that brings people in, right? Saving money in the bottom line never changes anything. Nobody cares. Is the reality, right? Making money in new ways, accessing new customers, building new products. That's what gets people to move, and that to me is the change that's happening now, whereas historically has not come to fruition.
Hmm. Let's zoom in into this a little bit. Explain us step by step how does Plume work and what does it mean when you say in your website on your website that you work with 180 protocols or apps?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. So what do we do today, right? Plume, we ultimately build a blockchain, right? We build a customized blockchain focused on real world assets and making it easy to do this. And then, of course, we build software around the chain itself to make it easier to interact with, right? Because especially unlike crypto native assets where you can just deploy a smart contract, with the real world, you have to onboard these real world things, whether they're
Mhm.
physical things that you have to tokenize or they're data feeds or just things related to the real world, right? So, for example, CPI data or like economic data or crime data or whatever it is, right? Bringing that on chain and make it useful is also things. So we build tools around the chain itself itself and then maintain the chain itself to make it easy to do these things. So that's ultimately what this is today. And what we want to do, and the intention of it, is to one, um, make it very, very simple and dead simple, right, for anyone to bring things on chain. Right, that's number one. So if you have an asset or have an idea, you should be able to use these tools without having to get too complicated and get stuff into the Plume ecosystem. That's number one. Number two is then to make sure it's easy to interact with and use that way, right? And that's why we have this community, this ecosystem, right? Which is, one of the things that really matters is when you go to a new chain, as an example, you got to make sure there's stuff to do there, right? Otherwise, what's the point, right? And so not only that from a user perspective, but from an asset perspective, right? Assets gain value with context and with movability, right? When you move things around, they get better, right? They sort of like, they improve, and you're allowed to do new things, and sort of increases the dimensions of how you can interact with that asset, which makes it better ultimately. And so when you want to bring things on chain, you want to make sure that it gets better by being on chain rather than get worse, right? And so by doing this, being able to plug into an ecosystem where now it's composable and usable across multiple things is the idea. So take example, real estate or house. A lot of people interact with real estate. There's many good real estate projects, there's many bad ones, but the bad ones, for example, always take a illiquid asset in the real world, right? Like a house, which is already hard to sell and is an
Yeah.
asset people don't really want to hold, right? Now you take that, it's illiquid, and then you put it on chain. What you've done actually then is you've shrunk the market by a thousand x, if not more, right? And then you've not actually improved the process in which it works, because houses still require mortgages, they require title, they require all kinds of things that are interactive. So you haven't improved. You actually made the product much worse, right? And so the only way to make it better is to make sure that that house now, right, on chain,
Mhm.
is it's not about fractionalizing. That's part of it, but it's now you
Mhm.
can use it elsewhere. Maybe I can go into a market and take out a loan against it very easily, right? Maybe I can sell off a fraction of it and pass off rental income to those people, or whatever it is, right? Adding new features, right, and new things you couldn't do are the only way to make it better, and that comes from an ecosystem and composability, and that's what we mean by 180 protocols today. We've been very, very focused and deliberate on making sure we talk to everyone out there in the RWA world. We haven't got to everyone yet, but
Mhm.
that's our intention and goal. We want to make sure every RWA project deploys on Plume, because we think that, to build an ecosystem and to really shepherd the stuff on chain, right, both for the existing on chain economy, but also for bringing net new things on, you need to have a sort of critical mass of things that you can do and move things around. And again, if things get better by having composability and having context, then the more is better, right? And so that's why we have these today. So we have protocols of all kinds, right? Some that are just asset issuers, meaning they're bringing on XYZ assets. Maybe they're bringing on sneakers or watches or financial
Mhm.
instruments or houses or whatever it is, right? So you have a lot of those types of protocols and projects. And then you also have more infrastructure type things, right? Or utilities, right? Maybe it's a DEX that allows you to do swaps. Maybe it's a lending market, right? Maybe it's a perps DEX, right? Or these types of things that allow you to interact and use these assets in different ways, right? Maybe it's, yield farming or yield stripping or whatever it is, right? So those are the types of things that are encompassed in this 180 projects, and how you think about and use and interact Plume. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the experience of Plume should be very simple. What we want to do is make sure that when you interact with real world assets on chain, you don't even know, right? It feels just like interacting with any other crypto native asset today, right? And if you go back, a lot of people ask me like, what's the real world asset that's going to work? What's the best one, right? Which one is going to actually bring adoption and get this to go?
Mhm.
I always say it's the wrong question, because it's not about when it's going to come. It's already here, right? The stablecoin is arguably the best product in crypto, right? And the stablecoin is the original RWA, right? And because it's a dollar hold in the real world, and on chain it's a token, USDC or USDT or whatever it is, right? And that moves around. Now the reason why people forget that the stablecoin is an RWA is because the stablecoin is just crypto, right? You just use the stablecoin as you need to, right? It's liquid, it's composable. I go into a pool, I swap for it, right? I can use it all over the place. People innovate on it and use it as a core thing, and new features have come up that we didn't know before that it wasn't designed for, right? And that's the magic of doing crypto and doing RWAs the right way, right? And we've seen tremendous demand, right? Stablecoin, especially this year, right? Who thought stablecoin would be an interesting topic? Like everyone's so excited about stablecoins now and so hyped, and it's like a whole thing, especially after the Bridge acquisition, right? And it's because they've realized that it kind of paints our thesis, which is it's the best path for onboarding, right? Because it's such a relatable thing, right? That product has improved by becoming on-chain, right? Because the US dollar now on-chain, right, is built in a crypto-native way. It's open, permissionless, composable. And then now you've unlocked new features that you couldn't do with the regular dollar, right? You are onboarding people in emerging markets. You are earning yield against this in different ways you couldn't do before. Institutions can settle instantly, right? Can do cross-border payments. You can do interbank transfers easily. All these things. And so you've made the US dollar better by putting it on chain and adopting a crypto first perspective versus bringing a digital dollar to the real world, right? That hasn't worked. We've tried that. We have plenty of analogies today of us trying to do digital currency, right? Run by a centralized institution. It hasn't worked. But the minute we put the dollar on chain in a crypto native way, it blossomed and it became a whole thing. And now it's very clear the stablecoin is going to be an incredible, powerful driver to the growth of crypto, but also just like a growth of bringing of onboarding things in, right? So that's the path that we have to go down, and why I think it's like an important topic, because it is definitively going to be, it's already happening. And what we're trying to do is accelerate that path by branching out from just the stablecoin, the US dollar on chain, to allowing you to do everything on chain, right? And interact with the world in that fashion. But there's a blueprint and a model right in front of us, and people just tend to forget it.
I actually never thought of it like that. I don't know if I'm the only
Good.
one that thinking of like stablecoin as a RWA like on chain. Um, no, I mean that's an interesting perspective. I'm still sort of like digesting it. Uh, when you talk about assets, can
Mhm.
you just take one and take like any example, any case study? You told me
Yep.
like 180 of them. And, if you have to say that, okay, I can explain this as a success story already for Plume, which one would you pick and why?
There's a bunch of them that could be interesting, but maybe I'll go for one that most people probably don't know about, right? That's a more straightforward thing. Well, we can talk about mineral rights. Um, Mineral rights are an interesting example because it's also something new to me. And like, I think part of the interesting thing about dealing with real world assets is you learn about all things that you like didn't know before. Mineral rights is a simple example. It's a common thing in places like Texas or Oklahoma, right, where there's oil, right? And what you do is you can rent, if you own a piece of this land. You can rent it out, right? And rent out the land underneath it so someone can go mine it, right? And mine it for
Mm,
oil, right? And it's basically like specialized real estate because there's always demand for it, right? And you generally know if there's oil there, so you make money, right? It's like a guaranteed thing. Now, the yields change because the price of oil changes, right? But broadly speaking, in Texas, they call this mailbox money, right? Because if you own one of these things, you just get paid on a very regular basis, right? You go to the mailbox and you get the money, right? And so the reason why I think it's interesting assets because it's a very safe, stable, straightforward way to earn 10, 12, 15, up to 20, 25% APYs, right? On just holding this asset, right? And there's demand for it because oil is always in demand, right? And so that's an interesting example. And I think when you do that, you can combine those other things. So as an end user, right? Maybe let's say I'm in Latin America, right? I'm in Argentina. My money is the peso's inflating at 200% a year, right? My savings account in the bank only pays me 40% a year, so I'm losing money at an incredible rate, right? A huge product for me is to one hold the US dollar, USDC or USDT, right, to just stop the bleeding, right? But the second unlock is now to be able to hold something, a US dollar denominated asset, something stable, rock solid, safe, straightforward, like oil, right? That just prints cash for me with a simple swap. All I have to do is push a button, I swap into this token, right? And now I'm sitting there holding and earning other stable yields that are coming out of this thing, right? And earning more and
mm,
more. And so you go from not only stopping the bleeding, but you're really rapidly increasing what you could do, right? And then from there, you have a foundation to do a lot of other things, right? Maybe you can take the yield and do yield splitting and sell it early, right? And then take that and maybe do some speculative stuff if you want. If you want to sit there and compound it, let it reinvest, you can do that automatically too. But it's just a simple example of, to allow anybody in the world with a simple click of a button get access and ownership to something that is relegated to a very few people today, right? If I wanted to buy, or get access to this mailbox money today in the real world, I wouldn't even know where to go, right? You'd have to find someone, call someone, figure this out. It's just not possible. Whereas if we do this right and build the plumbing and the infrastructure right, anybody all over the world, right, who wants to earn this money and who believes that oil is a good business or a stable place to make money, right, you literally just hit swap into a DEX, right, into an AMM, right, hold this token, and now you're earning this yield, right? That to me is like an example of how this should be, which is just like the stable. If you want to hold the US dollar, what do? Right? You take whatever you have, you swap into it, and now you're holding the dollar. There's nothing else you got to do, right? And if you want to, take the dollar, right, put it into something else to earn some yield, right? Or use it or swap it to something else, but like you can do whatever you want. And that should be how this goes as well. Right. So that's an example of like, something that's just, I think not something we don't talk about with reward assets, because we talk a lot in reward assets about treasuries, about maybe collectibles like Patex or art or something like that, right? They're either
Yeah.
highly esoteric or very safe. This stuff is right in the middle, right? It's more esoteric, but it still has all the properties of something that people want.
Yeah. And apart from stablecoin, which do you think are the most common assets coming on chain right now, and what trends do you see? Because I think you also put a number in terms of, I don't know, some billions that you
Yes.
think have the potential to come on chain.
Totally, totally. I mean, look, Plume today, we have several $1 billion of assets that are ready to come on
Mhm.
chain. Um, but look, I think if you look at one of our partners, RWAs, they have a bunch of graphs and charts that show this. I think it's very clear that there really are two categories that really are taking off after the stablecoin. Number one is the treasuries, right? UST bills, right? Or short duration treasuries, like those are still the number one like RWA coming on, right? In the way that we think about it. Private credit actually is growing very quickly, but I'll get to why that's different in a second. The treasury, the reason why people like it is because um, you have to follow the maturity of the market that you're in, right? And if we look at the on-chain market today, it's mostly retail, right? And the retail audience really is a barbell, right? You either want highly speculative, right? Incredible yield type stuff where I can do a 10, 50, 100x overnight, right? Also
Mhm.
go to zero, right? Or I hold something that just like I don't have to think about. It's for sure going to print. I don't need to worry about it. There's no variability, right? And there's something nice, stable, solid, and foundational about earning 5% on a very regular basis, right? We were trained, especially in the bear market, to accept and appreciate that 5%. That mentality carries with us today. And that's why it's still a thing. Right. So that's for sure is still the number one product because it has a lot of marketing behind it. It has a lot of history now, right? For coming from the bear market, and it's very stable and safe. It just has a different feel than APYs that change every 20 seconds, right? A different feel than like taking on some significant risk by holding these assets. It's locked in, it's solid. BlackRock and Larry Fink are behind it. You know it's fine. The U.S. government's behind it. You're getting 5% on a regular rate. Don't think about it, right? I
Mhm.
know that's happening. That's the product that people still want today because you're moving up from the stablecoin and want to stablecoin. The reason why people, it's the safe US dollar. I don't need to worry about it, right? And this is the same thing, but one level up. You get yield, right? But it's still the same dimension. Now, where is it going from here? Again, if you follow the maturity of the market, right, the sort of contours of the the crypto native market continues to change. So today it's mostly retail, but as we onboard new people, there will be new demands, new types of products, and that will change as well. And also, just the longer people are here, the more they mature because we go through cycles and people learn things, right? And so what we're seeing now is you go from things like stable coins to treasuries, and now we're going treasuries to certain higher, right? What we're doing here is there's two things. There's risk and there's yield, right? And as people seek more risk, right, seek more yield, excuse me, the risk also goes up, right? And so what we're seeing now is people still want to have very, very low risk things, right, but still earn a lot of yield. So what is that next? It's going to be things like corporate bonds, right? Very safe, stable things to roll with as well, right? And then you're going to have things like CLOs, right? Also very, very safe, but you get higher yields. You're not getting 5. You can get maybe 8, 9,
Mhm.
higher yields than that, right? And where this is ultimately going, right, is structured products, right? And structured products means you take a number of financial instruments together, right? So maybe you have a little bit of treasuries, maybe you have some corporate bonds, maybe you have some oil fields, right? And you put it all together into a package, and that produces a certain risk profile and a certain yield for you, right? That is attuned to the individual, right? And that's where we're going, which is to be able, once you tokenize everything, right? Today, there's only so many ETFs out there, right? There's only so many structured products you can get your hands into, right? But once you can combine anything together, and then you can also mix with crypto native products, right? I can hold some ETH into a structured product, and I can hold treasures at the same time into one bundle, right? So I have this 5% stability, plus I get the upside of ETH going up and down, right? Or BTC. Now you're creating new products. So that's directionally where we're going because people want simplicity, people want yield, people want exposure to these things, right? But assembling these baskets is hard. It's painful, right? That's why most people most people in America, at least when it comes to retirement, they just throw money into indices, right? That's what's easy, right? So be able to dynamically create that in a way that blends crypto and real things is where it's going, and that's where we think all the excitement is. Now, step one to get there, you have to bring all the stuff on chain. You need a very robust set of tokens here and a robust set of assets in order to mix and match to create interesting baskets, right? But that's kind of where things are heading.
So what makes your target audience then? Like, who's your target audience? You said there's a lot of retail people, or like, who are you? Because when you say I'm like a door-to-door salesman, I'm just like trying to get into your head. Like, who are you selling to? You're working with protocols, and then you're making products for like retail users.
Totally.
So yeah.
We have multiple audiences, and that's always the tricky part. But I'll keep it like broad. They're really, in
Mm.
my opinion, like I said, who's here today on chain? It's mostly retail, right? And so number one is going to be building products and for retail, right? But the benefit of us being a chain, and the reason why we like this position is you know um, ultimately we can change. Right, the
Mhm.
audience changes, so the products that we offer change, the things that are happening, the use cases change, right? But number one, right now, who's here? It's going to be retail. So we're building products, and the things that come along are really designed for them, right? How can you use this, and how can you balance out a DGen portfolio with these types of things, right? And so things come in waves. Right. When things are up, you're going to go more DGen. When things are down, you're going to go more into RWAs, stables today. But we're increasing the sort of surface area in which you can interact with RWAs, right, and stable things. So that's number one. Number two, though, also is there's a heavy onboarding element, right? That's ultimately the goal here. When we think about onboarding is really both more retail, but also institutions. Right. And so you end up having larger products, right, that are, even safer or, maybe lower yield, but sort of, but you can do more size. So that's kind of the secondary audience that we're building for as well.
And right now, who is the major uh, share? Who has the major share as audience?
Right now, it's definitely still retail for sure. I'd say
Mhm.
it's 80-20, 80-20 activity retail, but still, the 20, a lot of volume and a lot of size comes from that 20% as well, right? So it just depends what you're optimizing for. We really want to support both, which is, if we go back to the original vision, we want to make it easy for anyone to interact with the entire world on chain. Right. If we go back to that, I think our perspective has always been to start more bottoms up, which is focused on the user, focused on the individual, right, and the retail person, and build up from there. You can always add features and add things to make it more amenable to the institutional
Mhm.
folks, right? But you want to, in my opinion, it's harder to go backwards. It's harder to start to build for institutions and simplify it. It's easier to take something simple and add features on top to make it more suitable for a broader audience. But you have to start at the base level, in my opinion. It's very much, I think most great technology products are built in that fashion, right? If you look at the phone today, right, you have a very clear picture. You've got the iPhone and the BlackBerry, right? BlackBerry is built for big companies, right? Nobody liked using it. It was a thing, right? And it had all the features you needed. It had all the SSO stuff and all the security stuff, blah blah blah, right? And today, no one even remembers it. Right today, it's
Mhm.
the iPhone, which is bottoms up first, and they tacked on more features over time, but still kept it simple for the end user, right? And so that's our perspective. You have to start there, right? Because that's how you retain the experience that's required to make this work.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. And I think my next question you already explained a bit, but I'll still ask it. So what's like how would you define your sales and marketing strategy? That's the first part. And the second part is like as a crypto founder, as a web3 founder, how involved you are in this and how founder driven is it?
Yeah, totally. Um, Number one, I think sales and distribution stuff and go to market. I mean, in so many words, we target two audiences. One is existing build, like my audience ultimately is the builder, right? We
Mhm.
want to we build infrastructure and technology for entrepreneurs and other builders to build things for their audience, right? And so there are two types for us, at least. Number one is the existing on-chain RWA protocol, right? You're already here. You've done a lot of the work to get here, right? And maybe you're on another network. You're deciding what network to go to or whatever, right? We have to, make it easy for them to come and pick Plume. That's number one. Number two, though, is going off again. There's way more stuff off chain than on chain today, right? And the barrier to becoming an on chain person is very high. And so we really want to make sure that we spend a lot of time targeting those folks as well. There are a lot of people with great assets, great ideas, and great things they want to do, but there's just a gap in ability to do that. So we want to make it easy for them to come on chain as well. So from a go to market, we also target a lot of those folks and take people that are like I wouldn't consider normal like asset issuers or builders in RWAs and bring them on chain, right? And so that's why we have these set of products around the chain itself. We call our one is called Plume Arc, which is our tokenization engine. One is called Plume Nexus, which is around bringing real world data on chain, right?
Mhm.
Today, if you think about building an RWAs, generally speaking, you have to own the asset. Right, like most people say, like simply, I want to tokenize a house again, or a car, or Pokemon cards. Right, you tend to have to own those things to do it. Right,
Mhm.
now that's a huge barrier, though, right? There are plenty of people with great ideas that don't have those assets. and there's no reason they shouldn't be allowed to build in RWAs, right? You shouldn't have to own an entire apartment complex to build in real estate RWAs, right? You shouldn't have to, own an entire fleet of sports cars if you want to like build stuff around cars on chain, right? So how do you simplify that? And that's what Arc and Next do. They're abstraction layers on top of the Plume chain itself, that make it easy for you to interact. So, if you don't know anything about crypto, right, but you want to tokenize anything, right, you can easily click a few buttons to get on chain, right, and bring this asset on chain. And then secondarily, if you want to bring this data on chain as well, right, because also there's plenty of things in the world that like you don't have to bring the actual asset, you can just bring the representation of it on chain and use it, right? So instead of tokenizing every Pokemon card, you can just bring the price of Pokemon cards on chain and use those in different ways, right? You can build a perp stacks against it, you can build markets against it, or whatever, right? And so like Nexus is that. Nexus consolidates and works with a bunch of oracles to make it easy for anyone to say, oh, I want to bring, I would love to interact with CPI data on chain, let me go grab that. And they can just go grab it in one place, right? And now you can pull these things together. So as a builder in RWAs now, I can interact with those things at a much higher level. I can just say, I need CPI data, and I want a bunch of tokens that represent Ferraris, and just pull those. And now I can build with those as a crypto native. Now, once the world is software, I just need to be a developer to interact with the world, right? And so these tools are meant to abstract away and expand the builder audience so that we can really open the funnel there, because it's way too already knowing smart contracts is already limiting for building on chain, right? But having to both have smart contracts and have an asset is incredibly narrow. So that funnel has to get opened. So that's a huge part of what we do and what we focus on is targeting that audience and making sure that we build tools for those people. Second question, I founder driven. I mean, look, I think at least for me, like, every founder hopes it's not, because I think you want, you hope it takes a life of its own and everything. I think the truth is it's still very founder driven. I'm very
Yes.
involved in everything. I'm definitely, maniacal about a lot of things. I'm very, I pay attention to most things and I try to be involved in all. And I think at the end of the day, um, you know, my co-founders and I, we care a lot, and that means every single thing, right? The name, the logo, the brand, our style, the messages. We can't catch everything, and we don't catch everything. We miss a lot of things for what it's worth. It's just, it's more than we could take. But we're very involved, and I think, we care a lot, and I think especially in crypto. I mean, this too. The market moves
Yeah.
very quick. It moves quickly, and you have to be able to move and navigate quickly, and listen to the market and stay fixated on the vision, but stay very very flexible in the tactics. And if that's the case, then you have to be able to listen, change things, and be willing to make those bets. It's hard to do unless you're one of the founders as well. So, I'd say we're still in that fashion, but I see a bunch of change there, which is great as well. Which is a bunch of people on the team just starting to just like do things themselves, right? Push back on things and create new things that we didn't even think of, right? And that's what you ultimately want, right? Ultimately we have to push and press, but hopefully you create an environment and a system where, great people can come in and do their thing and drive things and do things you never thought were possible, right? And that didn't even cross our minds, because hopefully we've hired people that are all smarter than us, and thankfully I think we have.
I think like that's actually the Web3 way. So while you were building Plume, did you have to pivot in the last few, like, I don't know, in the recent times? And if yes, like at what point was it and why?
Totally. I don't think we've actually had to pivot so much, to be honest.
Okay.
I think we've been fortunate about that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean we haven't changed, though. We've changed a lot. And I'd say it's what we talked about earlier, right? I think we stay very fixated and attuned to what's going on in the market, right? Both the market. I mean, look, if you just look now versus 6 months ago, dramatically different market, right? And which means the types of things that people want now are very different than what they want. And people can, in crypto, I think everybody has just incredibly short, including myself, short memories, and they just don't remember things, right? So right now, all we know is this insane market cycle where everything is
Yeah.
going up. BTC is going to 1 million, right? Everything's going nuclear, and we'll never go down again, right? Versus a couple months ago, the sentiment was not great. In the summer it was very bad. And I feel like even before that was very bad, and that wasn't even that long ago, right? And so, depending on where you are in the cycle, things dramatically change because the products change, the people change, how you manage the business changes, all of that changes. And so, as a result, we've taken a bunch of that and had to like sort of shift and navigate the story a lot, and like what we do and how we do things. But ultimately, we haven't changed on the vision, and we've been fortunate that like I think we've been the beneficiaries of a lot of these like larger macro trends that have really continued to add steam to what we're doing versus make us change.
So you were not catching the trends, you were making the trends.
I'd like to think so, but I don't know. I think we we're right time, right place.
Yeah. I mean, talking of like good markets, today is actually December 19, 2024, and your team sent me this press release from yesterday of
Oh, good.
raising 20 million in Series A. So congratulations, first of
Yes.
all, for that.
Thank you.
It's like a great way, a pre-Christmas great gift you already have.
That's right.
What does this mean for Plume, Chris? Like,
Totally.
are things going to change? Because I think like whenever founders raise like money, especially in Web3, like they have this pressure to, oh my God, we are going to like grow faster.
Yep.
What does this change for Plume?
Hopefully nothing. Uh, hopefully nothing and everything at the same time, right? Meaning we want Plume and this sort of culture on the team and how we do things to stay the same. Right? I think it's very important,
Mhm.
right? How we because at the end of the day, going back to the thing I care most about is what does the individual user do? How do we make it easy for them to live on chain? Right? That shouldn't change, and how we service them and how we take care of the builders and everything shouldn't change. Right now, hopefully, what will change is more resources for everybody. Right, we're going to expand the team for sure. Right, which
Mhm.
means each team should have more resources to help more builders to build more things, right, provide more support, right, number one. And number two is we can also build new teams to help expand, right. The reason for this round is really driven by external factors, in a sense that we wanted to build for crypto natives in the beginning, right? Because we think that's where the market is, and that's how you want to. Once you set the foundation, it's hard to change, right? And so that's the foundation we want to set, and the style that matters. But the second phase is once that's happened, we've seen a lot of external demand coming in, right? Meaning now large asset managers and institutions want to tap into this, right? A lot of folks in emerging markets want access to these assets as well, right? So now you're beginning to see the onboarding story, right? Which we can bring new people in, we can bring new assets in, and allow that to create a flywheel, right? To really continue to grow crypto in the ecosystem. And so that's what this is for, right? To really press on those. And so those things, as a user, as someone in the community, as someone in the ecosystem, it shouldn't change anything, but give us more resources to help you, and also give those resources directly to the builders and the users, right? That's also one big part of it. But where we do think it hopefully changes also in an indirect way by bringing on more users, right? Bringing on more assets, bringing on more liquidity, that should make everything better in the ecosystem as well. So it should both be a direct change, but also indirect, by strengthening the bonds in the ecosystem today.
Yeah. I mean, that's great, actually. Do you think the market had something to do with, you think if it was a bear market, you would have still raised this
I don't
money?
know. Unlikely, uh,
Unlikely.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've fortunately, like, unfortunately for us, like, we've never raised in like a really good market, truthfully, like, things are better now for sure, but like when we raised, it was tough, it was definitely tough in the beginning, nobody cared. And it was still barely, a year and a half ago, like it was not up only yet. And then the second time we raised, things had cooled off, right? After the pump from mid-year, right? So things had cooled off and like it wasn't interesting again. So like we've never I always think, you should raise both when it's good for the business and when it's good for the market, ideally, right? But the requirement is at least it has to be good for the business, And so, like, for us,
Yeah.
thankfully, the market turned a little bit, and we got a little bit of the wind at the end. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different in a bear for sure.
So you raised money, but you also launched a fund in the like when did you launch the fund, the 25 million one?
It's fairly recently. Yeah. We're
Fairly
gonna do a
recent.
lot we're
Yeah.
gonna do a lot more around it soon, announcement wise, and talk about it more. So I don't think we've shared a ton about it yet. But long
Yeah.
story short, we're putting together a fund for the ecosystem. And the idea is the same thing. We want to support the builders and support entrepreneurs here, right? And I think they are the work they do is everything, right? Both for the market, but for the user, for us. And like they're the ones driving a lot of the change, the innovation, and what's happening here. And so the more we can, and I'm a founder too, right? And like it sucks most of the time, and
Mhm.
like, and it's hard. And the more we can take, the more nonsense I can take off their plate, right, the better. And so that's what we're focused on, which is like one big thing is the money that we've raised hopefully provides them with a lot of indirect resources, whether it's team, whether it's guidance, whether it's partners of ours, whether it's liquidity, ecosystem, all those things. And then the direct money raised for this fund is really for them to use, like, as a big part of, like, taking paying off a founder's plate is helping them with financing as well, right? So that's the idea. We have a bunch of great investors and partners of ours who are supportive of us and the ecosystem that have come together to really support the builders in the Plume ecosystem. So we've been really grateful and excited to share more about that, and also get that over to the builders.
Yeah, I think the most valuable part of working with Plume would be your experience both as a founder and a long-time investor as well. How can people apply? Is it like the applications are already open? Do you have a separate team for this fund, or is it your internal team that's working on this? Like, what's the plan?
Totally part of our internal team for now. It may change in the future, and there's a lot more to come on where to get access and all those things in the upcoming weeks. And so, I think if you follow along the website, we'll for sure make a bunch of noise around it, and so it'll be easy to find when it does come out. But it'll
Okay.
be on the website, just like everything else. Just sit there and apply. And of course, you don't even have to do that. Like we're always available on Discord or Telegram or whatever, right, or Twitter. So just ping us anytime, and we can always help with this stuff. Don't feel the need to like have to go through forms. I think that's the worst way to like begin interacting with someone is like have to fill out a fucking form. It's like you want to be able to like actually talk to someone and get a feel. So if that's the case, ping us anytime. And then of course we do forms later. We can help you with this stuff. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
And or be the reply girl or guy on Twitter.
Exactly.
Bloom. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so usually on this podcast, we always start with the personal story, but I don't know
Yeah,
why today first I jumped into the whole RWA thing. Maybe I was just like too excited after talking to you. So when we had like the intro call, you mentioned that so I asked you that whether you relate yourself more as a founder or more as an investor, and you said more as a founder. So, and I want to ask you, like, what are the learnings that you bring as being an investor that you apply in your founder life that have really helped you?
Yeah, totally. Um, I would say definitely. I definitely see myself more as a founder still than an investor. But I think both are very useful. And the things that I think I've mostly taken away and like helped us here, I think is around market selection and understanding like timing. You know, I think as a founder you get very caught up. Um, as a founder, you get very caught up in your own ideas, and you're very fixated on some things that you end up coming up with because you're baby and you created it, you have a lot of love for it, and that's all that, right? I think that's number one. Number two, though, is as an investor, then you realize after looking at so many companies that like one, every idea has been tried, right? And there's a million reasons that things don't work, and basically everything doesn't work. That's like almost the takeaway as an investor. And so the real lesson that I took away at least was that picking your spots is everything, you know, and understanding what market and what time is more important than anything. Of course, you still need great teams, great entrepreneurs. Like those are hard requirements, but you need to combine both of those to make it work. If you have a great team of great founders, right, but shitty market, you're still cooked. You know, and so you have to build a great market first, and then combine it with a great team. And so I think the benefit of having been investors, having seen all of that, and being flexible enough now to let go of things quickly, right, and to move on and to think about how to pick when to pick timing, right. But I see a lot of founders toil away for years in markets that are never going to produce, you know. Um, and so that's like the intention, right? And I think that's the main takeaway that I would say for any founder that hasn't been an investor before. I think really being honest about market timing is everything, right? It turns out like the FaceTime has been tried for the last 40 years. It gets tried over and over and over again, right? If you look at things like even like Uber and these, they've been tried over and over. There's a certain time and place when it works, right? If you look at Uber today, the reason it worked, right, was because you had the mobile phone that was an unlock. You have location and a computer that could not have happened before, right? That's the reason
Mhm.
why. So you could have tried. You got the greatest entrepreneur in the world try to build Uber, it would have never worked until that moment, right? You could have had the greatest entrepreneur try to build the iPhone, right, before Steve Jobs, it still wouldn't have worked, right, because the cellular networks were not ready for this, right? And the chips are just not good enough, right? And so timing is everything, and I think that's the important thing to take away. But also, I think on the other side, when you're a founder, right? Excuse me, when you're an investor, you get too fixated on the academics of it, right? Which is like, oh, it's all markets and all timing, right? And it's everything,
Mhm.
right? And you can get too fixated on just trying to pick the market that matters. When, I think ultimately you realize, uh, me having done both, I think it's both that matters, and I think really the truth of it is every great company is a shit show and it's a mess, and it's ugly, and when you really look at it, it's horrifying,
Mhm.
and when you're an investor, when you're too far away, you just look at the numbers in the picture and like any black mark in there scares you. You're looking for pure up and to the right, right? When the truth is every great thing has a lot of stops and starts, a lot of stutters, a lot of paths where they could have gone sideways anytime. It's about how you navigate that. And so I think it's learning to understand how to pick your spots. That's great as an investor, but not to get too caught up in that, because at the end of the day, execution beats everything every single time. And having a great founder who can power through all of the nonsense still matters just as much. So I think it's holding both those ideas at the same time in your head that matters a lot.
What's the top thing that matters to you when you are looking at investing?
I think it's both those things, to be honest, that I just mentioned. But if I had to go to one thing, like I'm always very founder driven. I
Mhm.
tend to think because you can change markets, you can change products, you can change customers. You cannot change a founder.
Yeah.
The company will die without them. And so I think that's the important part. Because even if you're a great founder and the idea is bad or the market's bad, they'll change because they're a good founder. They'll figure it out
Mm.
very quickly and move on. And so I'd say a lot of my great investments and great deals and things that have gone well were things that were completely different when I did the investment. Like some of them in markets I had no idea about. Right. And so it's better. I think it's often just index on the founder. Right. It depends on stage too, for what it's worth. Right. But at the earlier stage, to me, it's all about the founder. Do they have the juice? I always call it, if you've got the juice, like that's enough. You'll figure it out. And if not, if I bet on 10 people with the juice, it'll still work. Because inevitably 2 or 3 will hit it, and that'll be fine.
And does it matter to you if it's a single team, a single founder team, or do you always prefer like at least two?
I think either can work.
Okay.
I think it just comes down to the founder though, and you have to be mindful of that, because I think um, I have 2 co-founders today, and I'm very grateful for it, because it's hard. And without being a founder sucks, in most cases, because you have no one to ask for anything, and it's a very lonely
Mhm.
journey, and so the more people you can really share that with, right, and actually understand, internalize, and care at the same level you do, it's always better. Um, and so I think it can be done. I've seen many great solo founders, right, but they're just tougher than I am. And I think most people are not that tough either to do it. It's very, very hard, and unless you're one of those very special people, I tend to think you need more than one.
Yeah, no, that's good advice actually. I think your website, like your bio somewhere says that, you sold one company, you took one to public and one you drove to zero. So so which one do you think like taught you the most valuable lesson and what was it?
Totally.
Or each
I
taught you
I I think
something?
I think all taught me different things,
Yeah.
but really, look, I think you learn from success, not failure. That's the starting point, So, taking things to zero teaches you nothing. It teaches you just what not to do, but there's a trillion things not to do, so you've actually learned nothing,
Mhm.
right? So, I don't think that's useful at all. I think number 2, I actually think hyper success also doesn't teach you quite as much as you think, because you forget the truth, right? You forget what really gave you successful, right? And you over index on those things. That's why if you look at the greatest companies out there, you look at Facebook, you look at Google, right? You look at these companies that just like incredible business spitting off cash, and like iconic companies today. They don't produce great founders. Almost all their founders are trash. Right? They're just not good because they didn't understand what you're too successful. Right, you never understood what actually made it successful. No one had to
Mhm.
grind. Right, whereas the great founders always come from successful but moderate companies. Yahoo, an incredible place, produced tons of great founders. Yahoo's very moderate success. I mean, Google clearly dominated them. Right, but Yahoo's produced more great founders than Google. Right, that may have changed with OpenAI, but I guess like that's generally how it is, right? And I would say the same for us, and same for me, right? Like, I think I learned the most from the first one we did that we sold. It was moderate success at best, We sold it fairly quickly. A lot of failure in the beginning to get there, and a lot
Mhm.
of staying awake at night staring at the ceiling. But we flipped it and we learned about it, and that taught me a lot of things. It taught me about the importance of the product, really the importance of a team. There's only one time, really, outside of I think Plume now, where you built a team where it all worked. You didn't have to think about it. The team, every single individual was very, very strong. At their own respective areas, there was a high degree of trust, a high degree of competence, and such a alignment and lock on the vision that everyone knew how to make the correct decision very quickly, take the appropriate risks, and just move at an incredible pace, right? And so you could have a team of 10, easily outcompeting with teams of hundreds. right? And I've only really done it once at that level, and that was
Mhm.
the first company that we did, right? Which was moderate. We only had a couple people, right? We sold it pretty quickly, and we had some good success, but it wasn't a huge outcome, but that was the one to me that we learned the most from, because we had to grind and then we turned it, versus just stepping into success where you don't learn anything. And in fact, most of the times when you do that, you end up thinking you're the reason it's successful, and you sort of attribute the wrong things and you get a big head. And then later you try to realize, wow, it turns out like real life is hard, and like starting a company is hard, and like it doesn't really work. So I think that's usually where it comes into play. And that it's the same for me as well.
It taught you founder mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we have like 4 minutes. I don't want to take too much of your time, and we have some like we usually end with a rapid fire.
Yeah, please.
It's yeah. Sometimes people like think like these questions are a little deep for a rapid fire, so they take give longer answers. So please feel free.
Yep.
Okay, so what's more important to you, the journey or the destination?
Journey. No question.
Does success come from talent, luck, or hard work? And you can't pick more than one.
Oh man. Hard work.
If you could master one skill instantly, um, what would it be?
Um, Man, hard to pick one. Either It's either an internal or external one. The internal one would be the ability to learn anything very quickly. I want to get to 90% competence in anything in
Mhm.
like 1 or 2 days. That'd be the first thing, right? So I could pick up any talent very easily. Not all the way; that'd be too powerful, but enough to traverse it. Or the other one is to be able to convince anyone to do anything. So
Yeah, nice.
I'll take both of them if I could.
Okay. So, what's the biggest challenge facing humanity right now, according to you?
Oh God. Um,
See, it's deep.
yes, biggest challenge facing humanity. I think it's probably empathy. Is the real thing. I think at the
Mm,
root of all of this is, we're seeing tremendous amount of global strife, right? Every country seems to be going through its own thing. Globally, seems to be going through a lot right now, right? We're definitely like, we're having a moment, not particularly good one, and my belief, at least, is the introduction of the internet is a big part of the problem, and specifically mobile phones. Now
yeah.
everything is connected, and what that's done is it's completely eliminated the ability to care about anything else. There's too much information. We cannot hold it. It's the classic Netflix thing, right? Instead of watching TV, you scroll forever, right? You
Mhm,
forget to care. You
mhm.
forget to do what you're actually supposed to do, is care about other people, right? And care about the world and try and make things better. And now everyone's become hyper. It's too much information. We focus on ourselves,
Yeah.
so we've lost empathy.
Yeah, I mean, especially also I feel in crypto, like our jobs, like we have to be chronically online, right?
Yes.
Like, especially like I'm the marketing person, and for me, like I live online. I feel like
Yes.
that's my life.
Yes.
Okay, do you think that when technology can like truly replicate human creativity and needs, and how like does it scare you?
Uh, yes and yes. I don't think people are that
Mm,
creative, honestly. I mean, people are actually very simple,
okay.
truthfully. Um, which is not to say we're not creative, but
Hmm.
in my opinion, creativity is just it tends to be addition of things that did not get put together before, right? You take X in one market, Y in one market, and put it together, and that creates a new thing. And that's usually what creativity is, right? That's why I say great artists steal, right? Because most times it's just taking from others and putting your own riff on it, which is creativity on its own. But it's not that hard, in my opinion, to replicate. And it is horrifying. Yes.
Okay. Is ambition a gift or a curse?
It depends. But more often than not, I think it's a curse. It ends up going poorly for most people.
Yeah.
Depends on what the goals in life are. But if you benchmark it to happiness in life, which I tend to do, it's usually not a good thing to be ambitious.
No, I mean, I kind of like agree. Okay, now the last one. If you could ask the universe a question, what would you ask? Like kids have a lot of them.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. Man, these are deep. You're right. What if I could ask the universe a question?
You tell
I,
me, then I'll tell you.
yeah, actually, I want to hear yours for all of these, to be honest. But I think I still want to know how it all began. That's probably where it really comes from, because I think so much of our understanding of the world is
Mm.
predicated on that, and if that's true, then great. If it's not, then we should fix it, and make sure we get it right. And so for
Yeah.
me, I think tracing back that is what I would care about at least. I don't know. What about you?
No, I mean, that's great. Mine is like related. I want to ask, are we in a simulation like or not? Because yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot. It's like,
It
is
sure
this
feels
all
like it.
real?
It
Like you and me and this podcast, or are we just an experiment? Like,
100%.
so
100%.
cool. It was so much fun talking to you, Chris. I'm so glad we did it. We had like a few scheduling problems, but this happened. And I wish you a great Christmas. Happy holidays to you with your family as well. Take some time off, even though you are a founder. And we will release this episode in January 2025.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great. And yeah, again, happy holidays to you and your family, and enjoy the rest of the year.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Awesome. Take it easy. See you.